Hi, my name is Sorcha. I'm a nutritionist and healthy lifestyle blogger from Ireland, and on this channel I help make healthy living simple because it doesn't have to be complicated. In today's video I'm going to show you how to read nutritional labels, because being able to read nutritional labels will mean you can make healthy, informed choices without just listening to other people. You can go into a shop, look at a food and make your own decision about whether or not you want to eat this food or not. First thing you need to look at is the ingredient list. A lot of foods we might expect to have more of a certain ingredient in it, like chicken soup. You would expect the first or second ingredient to be chicken, but that's not always the case. I'm going to look at these spaghetti hoops. As you can see, the first ingredient is actually tomatoes, and the second ingredient is spaghetti hoops. And then it also gives you the ingredients of the spaghetti hoops, so that it's durum wheat, semolina, water, to make up the pasta. And then you've got other ingredients, so you've got modified corn flour, acid, citric acid, garlic, salt, onion extract. So there's a whole list of ingredients, and some of them you wouldn't have expected, like it's been fortified with vitamin D, and it says contains naturally occurring sugars. So they're the sugars that come from the tomatoes. We're going to look at this chicken soup. Now, it's powdered chicken soup, which I don't recommend people eat because it's very high in salt. But we're going to look at the ingredient list. So, first ingredient is maize starch, then there's wheat flour, skimmed milk powder, salt, palm oil, glucose. Like, I'm looking through this and the chicken doesn't appear in the ingredient list to more than halfway through it, like nearly to the end. And there's only 0.9% chicken in it. And it's probably not even real chicken. So it would be much better either to make homemade chicken soup that has actual chicken in it, or even some canned soups or soups that are in the pots that you keep in the fridge, you buy in the fridge section. They're a lot better than this. This is not good. Wouldn't recommend it. A way to know if something has a lot of sugar in it is if the first, second, and sometimes even the third ingredient is sugar. It doesn't mean you shouldn't eat it, but just be aware that this food is high in sugar or its main ingredient is sugar. The next step is, of course, to look at the nutrients. This part of the label is usually something some people don't really understand how to read it. And once you know how to read it, then you're sorted. So, first thing that comes up is energy. That's calories. You've got per 100 grams, and then you've got per recommended serving, which in this cereal it says 40 grams. So then underneath that you've got your fat, and underneath that you've got of which are saturates. So we're going to ignore the per 100 grams here for a minute. We're going to look per serving. Just per serving, fat is 3.5 grams. That's total fat. And underneath that, of which are saturates, so that's saturated fat, is 0.5 grams. That's really good. That means that only 0.5 of that 3.5 is saturated fat, and the rest is unsaturated fat, which we know is good for us, good for our heart, good for our brains. So next is carbohydrate. You've got 23 grams of carbohydrates per serving. And then under that, of which are sugars, you've got less than 0.5 grams. This is also really good. This means that less than 0.5, which is barely nothing, is sugar, added sugar. We want that number to be as low as possible. Now, the carbohydrate could be up 30 or upwards. As long as that of which our sugar's number is low, then it's good. Next, we've got fibre. Obviously, this is quite high in fibre. It's got 3.2 grams of fibre per serving. Next, we've got your protein, 4.7 grams. Pretty good. It's also really, really low in salt. It's got less than 0.01 grams of salt. You should try and aim for less than 2 grams of salt per day. So having less than 0.01 gram in this bowl of cereal is a good start. You might see on some foods a percentage down the side here, like on this can of beans. It said percentage RI. That's recommended intake. If you're not sure what your recommended intake for a particular nutrient is, I've put a link down below in the description box that brings you to where you can type in like your age, your gender, and it will tell you how much of a certain nutrient you should be eating. Here, it gives a percentage, and it's roughly for the general population, adults. So I wouldn't really worry about it that much. It says of which are saturated, so beans are very low of saturated fat, less than 1% of your recommended intake. For fat, 1%. For protein, 19% of your recommended intake. Salt, 20% of your recommended intake. So, like I said, everyone's recommended intake is different depending on their gender, their activity level, their body size even. So I wouldn't go by this recommended intake that's put on the food labels as much. So this is the Dietary Reference Value Finder from the European Food Safety Authority. If you click into nutrients, it will take you to all the nutrients, including energy, which is calories. So I'm going to scroll down to minerals and click on minerals. It'll show me all the minerals. And if I click on vitamins, it'll show me all the different vitamins. I'm going to click on iron. You can also click all minerals or all vitamins if you wanted. Now click on next. It'll take you to all the different categories, so infants, children and adolescents, adults, pregnant women, lactating women, or all populations, which is all of those categories. I'm going to click on all populations and both genders, and then go into next, and it's going to show me the male and female different just for iron because their needs are different, but average requirement would be meeting the needs of half the healthy population, and is usually used if there's not a lot of data collected. Population reference intake meets the needs of most of the population, so I would be more inclined to look at that number. And as you can see, iron requirements for females are highest when they're pre-menopausal, so when they're menstruating, and then after menopause their needs go down. Next part is really important, especially if you do suffer from allergies or intolerances. It's law for food companies to put any ingredient that is listed as an intolerant or allergy in bold or underline it some way that it can stand out, or put it separate from the ingredients as well as in the ingredients. So people with allergies and intolerances can be aware that this food contains that and they can avoid it. I'm using the chicken soup again. You probably think I'm clicking on it, but it's a great example because you can see here wheat is in bold, milk is in bold, milk again, soy, wheat, milk. There is a list of ingredients that are common intolerances and allergies. Now you can be intolerant to anything, but this list contains 14 foods. This allergy intolerant list is from the Food Safety Authority Ireland website, but I'm pretty sure it's the same in most countries. It starts off with gluten and cereal products that contain gluten. So if they contain wheat, barley, rye, spelt, they usually contain gluten. That would be for celiacs, and there's also people who are gluten intolerant. They're not celiac, but they're gluten intolerant. Eating gluten makes them quite unwell also. Then you've got crustaceans and mollusks, which would come under shellfish, which is quite a serious allergy. You've got fish. People are allergic to fish. You've got tree nuts and peanuts. So tree nuts would be your walnuts, your almonds, that kind of thing. Also, like a nut allergy is also quite serious, and usually people who have nut allergies carry about their EpiPens with them. You've got soy, you've got sesame, sulfur dioxide and sulfites, which are in quite a lot of processed foods. So if you do have an intolerance or an allergy to these foods, you need to be aware that they're in quite a lot of processed foods. You have also, they can be in beer and alcohol, other alcohol products. You've got eggs, milk. Now, if you have an allergy to milk, it can be for various reasons. You don't just have to be lactose intolerant. You can be galactosemic, so you're intolerant to like the lactose once it's been broken down. So basically you're intolerant to lactose as well. You could be intolerant to the protein in milk. You've got lupins, mustard, and then there's celery. Like I said, if you are intolerant to something that's not in this list, that doesn't mean that you should be eating it or allergic to it. I know people who are allergic to strawberries, are allergic to tomatoes, are allergic to, like, you can be allergic to anything. It's your body. If you know you're allergic to it, don't eat it, or whatever your dietitian or doctor has told you. Sometimes if it's just an intolerance, you might be told to eat it in small amounts. It really is important that you get professional advice on that kind of thing, because it can be very dangerous if you try eating these things and your body isn't able to cope with them. Now I'm going to talk about something that it gets on my nerves sometimes. Best before and used by. What's the difference? Best before means that the food is at its best quality before this date. It doesn't mean after that date you have to throw it away. Taking bread, for example. Bread would have a best before date. After that date, it might be not as fresh. Even when it gets to the point where it's got blue mold growing on it, as long as the whole loaf isn't covered in blue mold, you can pick the blue mold out and you really won't suffer anything. Like, it's not going to give you food poisoning. Throwing out food that has a best before date when it's still perfectly good to eat. Fruit and vegetables, breads, even biscuits and cakes and stuff like that, that they're not going to give you food poisoning or make you sick from eating them after that date. They might not taste as nice, they might taste better when they're fresh, yeah, but they won't do you any harm. Sometimes people think, oh, the best before date is today, I need to throw it out now because it's gone. Now, not to be confused with the used by date. That means you have to use it by this date. These foods are foods like dairy, meat, not foods that have a long shelf life. Foods that are, fridge foods that have to be kept in the fridge. Coleslaw is a big one, potato salad. These foods, if you eat them after this date, they will most likely give you food poisoning. Be very careful with meat, fish, poultry, like your chicken and stuff like that. Even cooked chicken as well that you get in packets. If it's past the date, don't eat it. Throw it out. Normally these foods, you will smell them. They'll be off, by then. Don't think, oh, my food budget is really low, I'm just going to chance it, it'll be fine. You could get really ill with these foods. Also, salad foods can be quite dangerous as well. Now, I'm not talking about the lettuce and that kind of the green veg that you'd get in your salad, you'd buy it fresh. You might notice the lettuce is a bit limp or whatever, but that should be okay as long as it's been kept in a clean, sanitary conditions and stored properly. It's the made up salads that you would buy in the shop, and they're already made up and they're in the box. If they'll have a used by date, because they usually have some chicken or some kind of a protein in it. They usually have some kind of a sauce, and yeah, you need to eat them. And chilled foods, that's I can remember. So dried pasta is fine. Like, dried pasta lasts for years at a time, but fresh pasta that you buy in the shop, it doesn't have a long shelf life, and you can't eat it after it's used by date because you could get food poisoning. From a food safety point of view, you need to know that used by date means you need to eat it by this date or get rid of it. Best before date means you can buy the food. If you eat it before that date, it might taste better, the texture might be better. If you eat it after that date, you're not going to die, so you'll be fine. So don't throw out the bread just because it says best before this date. Throw out the bread when it is completely blue molded and you would have to have no taste buds at all or no sense of smell to eat it. That's when you throw it out. Some other things you'll find on the label is storage, and storage can be important. It tells you how to store the product, obviously. It tells you how to store it correctly so that you don't end up having to throw it out. Some chilled foods will say once open, use within 24 hours. That means it might say on the best before date that or the use by date would be on chilled foods. It's fine for a week, but you open it, you only have 24 hours to eat it then. So you've got a timer. Don't eat it after that because you've broken the protective atmosphere and the bacteria can get in. Storing canned foods once you've opened them, like if you open a can of beans, you might not eat the whole can of beans. You need to put it into a container, an airtight container, and keep it in the fridge and use it within a certain amount of days. I think it's 2 or 3 days. Storage is very important. And even for foods like your fruit and vegetables, your potatoes, your salad foods, you need to keep them in a clean environment because usually you eat these foods raw, and I don't think a lot of people wash their apple or their piece of fruit like thoroughly before just taking a bite out of it. If it's sitting in a fruit bowl, you usually just grab it and eat it, and that should be fine. It's just you need to make sure if it's warm and there's flies about, maybe keep a covering over it or something like that. Then with your potatoes, obviously, if you're cooking them and you're not peeling off the skin, which is really good because that's where the fibre is, you need to scrub all the dirt off. Make sure that there's no insects in there, like from vegetables. They're taken from the ground, especially organic ones. You buy carrots, organic carrots, and they still have the dirt on it. That's great, but you need to make sure you're not eating that dirt or eating the insects that are there. All you need to do is wash them, really. With meat, keep it separate from the foods that are already cooked or that you're eating raw, so no cross-contamination. Maybe it's a good idea to have 2 chopping boards. If you find yourself getting mixed up, have like a red chopping board for your meat and have a green one for your vegetables or your foods that you're eating raw or that are already cooked. It's very just important to be mindful of food safety and food hygiene. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something, and I hope this helps you with reading your food labels so you can make more informed choices about what you eat. Also, it might help you save some money. The tips about the best before and use by dates, storing food properly, and reading the back of the label to tell you how to store it properly and also how to prepare it properly so you don't mess it up. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that you're notified for any other videos. I hope to see you next time. Bye!